I'm making a modification to my Rubo bench. I built my own vices, and I've got the a bench crafted style of vise that I made. And one of the items that goes on there is a tensioner to right on top the parallel guide. And this originally has a steel pin with a bearing on it with a plastic wheel in here. And it looks, well, really like this one. And you can see that wheel. This is a hard plastic wheel, though. I didn't have anything spongy or soft like rubber. The problem I'm having is when I clamp something in the vise, it tends to kick the parallel guide up if I don't get it the pin in exactly the right hole, or if the part is just a little bit thinner or thicker than what the parallel guide allows for. And what that does is it causes this to get pushed up away from the parallel guide, so when you're running it free, that wheel isn't touching the top of the parallel guide and the whole thing kind of clunks around and it's not very smooth. So what I decided to do is replace this one, and I've made a new one here, and this one's just flat on the top, and I've cut a hole in the top of it with a Forstner bit for a spring. I've got a steel part that I turned from a 1/2 inch bolt. It fits inside the spring, and I put a countersink in it, and I have a bolt that I've filed a point on that fits that countersink, and these will go into another block. I've drilled it out a little bit oversized so that the spring has got some play inside of there so it can't bind up, and I've put a threaded insert in from the other side. So this pointed bolt will go into the threaded insert, and it'll go on the end of the spring. That'll fit into the end of there. This will bolt to the bench. The original bolts that held the original adjuster will sit in here, but I won't tighten them down real tight. I've also waxed the back of this where it goes against the leg so this can move up and down. And what I'll do, I'll set that with no tension on it, back the bolt out, bolt this solid to the bench, and then I've got some room I can preload that spring so that if the parallel guide does get cockeyed, it can spring back and still right on top of it without losing its tension, and hopefully the vise will glide in and out a lot smoother. Okay, here's an explanation of the problem. With this parallel guide, I've got a lot of different holes in it, but they're about 5/16 between centers on the nearest holes. In order to clamp something this wide in the vise, I need to be able to stick this pin in here into an appropriate hole and then tighten the vise. Now, there's a wheel under the front of the parallel guide, and there's a wheel on top at the back. And it should be somewhat captured between these two wheels so that as you turn this, it goes in and out nice and smooth. What happens here is right now it's the top of the vise is starting to get tight on the board, and as I come up to the pin on the parallel guide, it levers up, and it actually pushes this up and away. So if I hold that in place now and I loosen the vise, it was 1/16 of an inch probably from touching the top of the parallel guide. So you get that problem with it, with this slop around while you're moving the vise, and it's not very smooth. Alright, so with this one in place, and I put the spring mount on top of there and tighten it down, even if this does kick up, the spring will allow it to kick up, and then when I loosen it, the spring will automatically put it right back down so that the vise will run smoothly. Alright, I've got the new guide in place, and you'll be able to see when I tighten the vise that this gap up here where the spring is will get tighter by quite a bit, and as I release the vise, the spring will tension it back down, and consequently it runs very smooth. And the reason it levers up right there is because I have leather in the vise jaws, and there's nothing down here to even that out. So when this last little bit closes, it pops that up. But the same thing happens when I clamp a part that falls in between two of these holes. I have to pick one or the other, whichever one's closest, and usually it ends up levering up like that a little bit. So we'll see how it works. It might even get ambitious and put a little finish on it later, but for now I'm going to let it run and see how it works out.